Polteageist as a freaking teapot has got to be the most innocent looking Pokemon that strikes fear into my heart every time I see it. But he's got some scary big base 134 special attack, which is somehow higher than I remember it being, paired with solid 114 special defense that allows it to easily exploit special attackers with the best setup move in the game, Shell Smash. This thing is without a doubt the strongest Pokemon with access to the strongest move, which is crazy. Immediately being able to double our attack, special attack, and speed, it quickly becomes fast as hell while popping a white herb to go ahead and negate the defensive drops. But the thing's just getting going, because if we get hit by a physical attack, this lowers our defense but also doubles our speed thanks to the weak armor ability. While this is generally enough to just outspeed and melt stuff with Stab Shadow Ball, it now can pull off some crazy nonsense with stored power. At base 20 power, we get plus 20 for each stat boost, meaning after just one Shell Smash, this becomes a 140 power psychic move, and an insane 180 power if we also get the weak armor boost. We've got Terra Blast fighting for some great coverage, and while Polteageist is a predictable mon where it really only does Shell Smash shenanigans, it can usually find itself in a position to completely take over a game if you're not prepared. So I've been personally victimized by this damn teacup for far too long. Out of all Pokemon that get access to Shell Smash, Polteageist is by far the strongest. So today we're gonna go smashing some teacups and have a good time doing it. If this sounds like a fun time to you, consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm working on hitting 400k. We're getting kind of close and you can help me out. Now with that, let's just go ahead and jump into the match. All right, so just from team preview on this one, the forecast is looking sunny. I got my sunscreen, fully expecting a Torkoal lead here. They've got some sweepers like probably solar powered Charizard. They have the Lilligant in the back. It turns out, however, they lead off with the Hisuian Samurott. Now, I decided to just go with the Regidrago just because I'm thinking I can get some big damage on a Torkoal just to start things off, but it also ends up being kind of nice. I decided to just go for the Draco Meteor here. Turns out they do, in fact, switch into their damn Fairy Cotton Ball. So, while it was worth a shot, and I could have also potentially gone for a Terra Steel Blast, I feel like it's a little early. So, I'm going to conserve the Dragon Ball here. I figure one thing I can do is go into my Grand Ball. I say, you want to go fairies? We're going fairies, baby. I think this thing maybe just is going to go for something like a Tailwind. But as I bring in the Grand Ball, I also figure that I Assault Vested, I can pretty much win a 1v1 here. Now, it turns out they do go for the Prankster Encore, which is evil, and boy, do I hate that thing. But it works out nicely, because now they decided to stay in. They go for a Moonblast, and Dog Invest takes that shit nicely. I can then fire off a Play Rough, and we're just tossing around fairy damage out here. I can go for one more to knock it out. I figure they probably want to conserve the thing. And if I'm them, I probably go Torkoal here. And as much as I would like to Earthquake, I don't want to overpredict. So I just go for the Play Rough here again. It turns out they do bring in the Torkoal. And young Chester over here is going to make things sunny inside of our Diamond Minecraft house. So Play Rough doesn't do much. But the good news is, while I figure this thing probably just sets up a Stealth Rock here, I'm pretty free to Earthquake. It's going to be a 2-hit KO in this range, at least I'm thinking. And it looks like it is. So I get that big damage off here. They do just click the Stealth Rock. And now I've got myself in a position to try to make a little bit of a play here, right? I need some momentum. With the sun up, they got some fast stuff that's feeling really scary. So if I'm them, just fully expecting an Earthquake, I probably want to go into the Charizard here, right? So expecting that, I'm going to make a little switch of my own and bring in Lycanroc, just hoping that I'm met with a Charizard. So Lycanroc comes in. Unfortunately, with the Stealth Rock around, that means that I do lose my Focus Sash. So I can't really go for any crazy Endeavor stuff, but they do end up swapping themselves. And look at, they end up going into the Charizard here. So that feels pretty good. While this thing comes in for free because of the fact that, I haven't really gotten a chance to get up my Stealth Rock. I am for sure just going to click an Accelerock here. I've got the matchup I was looking for. However, as you kind of expected, they're going to go for the Terra here. So as they bust out the Terra Water, I'm a fan of Terra Water Charizard myself, but that's unfortunate because now it loses its 4 times weakness to Rock. Not only that, but the next time it comes in, if I did have Rocks up, it wouldn't take much from it. So unfortunately, now an Accelerock just basically heals the guy and just straight up throws a Weather Ball right in my face. So that knocks out the Lycanroc. Unfortunately, I also was not even able to get up my Rocks. And now I'm dealing with a Charizard who at least is at about half. After the Solar Power, while it does get that increase in damage, it's gonna slowly whittle itself down. So I've got a couple options in terms of switching here. First of all, I could go Regidrago and reveal the Choice Scarf and be able to outspeed it, but then that just likely draws in potential Whimsicott to come back in, and I find myself in the same spot. So I instead decide to go into the Gramble, who, with the Assault Vest, I'm thinking maybe there's a shot that I'm able to live something. It turns out after Stealth Rock damage especially, I overestimated the Granbull with the AV. It's going to definitely knock me out there with the Weather Ball. And I should have definitely not done that. But it is what it is, right? So Charizard's over here just getting hurt by the sun, which is a weird thing to do if you're a Charizard. However, Now I figured my best bet is just to go into the Regidrago, right? I kind of just need to put the pressure on the Zard here. I'm also feeling like their late game Lilligant is going to be very scary. Chlorophyll ability is going to allow it to outspeed everything, and that thing is frightening as hell. So as I go Regidrago here, I'm thinking I need the momentum back, right? And one way I can do that is expect to switch into the Whimsicott here and be able to go for the Terra Blast. One great part is I don't actually need, since I got so much great chip on the thing, I can just go for a Raw Dog Terra Blast, baby. You don't even need to go for the Terra. That is going to be able to knock it out, and down goes the Whimsicott here. So I still have not revealed the fact that this thing is Choice Scarf, right? And that's the great part, and that I can, kind of surprise them later with that. Now, however, freaking Lilligant comes in with its little clogs, and this thing in the sun is definitely still going to be faster than Choice Scarf Regidrago. So while that's unfortunate, I now got to try to make a play, and the great part is the sun is not going to be up forever. So as I check, there's going to be 2 turns left. So first of all, I need to decide to bring in the Empoleon here. The main thing is with this is I figure they probably go for a triple axle. Looking at a Regidrago, that's likely what they click. Turns out they do go for the triple axle, and they also only get the 2 hits, which is great. That's not going to do much. Empoleon comes in safely, or is about as safe as you can get. And now the reason why I go Empoleon here is basically because I can get a huge bit of momentum if they go for the fighting move here. Now looking at an Empoleon, I'm like, surely this thing goes for the close combat, right? I can bust out the Terra Ghost, and if I'm able to get an agility off, I will be in a spot to be able to outspeed with the Empoleon after the sun goes away, and then all of a sudden, Empoleon's scary. Problem is, they end up going for the Solar Blade, and that's a good middle ground play there, because now I look like a fool with the damn ghost on my head. The Solar Blade is going to be just enough to knock me out, and I was really just, if they click the fighting move there, Empoleon stonks her to the moon. So while I now have to deal with dragging Empoleon's lifeless body off the battlefield, I figure there's one situation where I have a win condition here, right? And that is, of course, going to be our boy Polteageist. So the great part is their momentum is a little bit halted here in terms of the sun being gone, right? They can't go for a Solar Blade and be able to get that off immediately, right? So Polteageist is pretty free to come in here and start stirring some things up. Now, obviously, I can go for the Shell Smash here. I need at least one of them to start to get things going. And while they likely are going to have to go back into the Torkoal to reset the sun to be able to outspeed, I now find myself in a spot versus the Samurott, which is a little bit frightening. So I still, while I feel like I have a better position than I've had this match, I still find myself in a spot where even after a Shell Smash, I do get my White Herb to reset my defenses, which is great. But then as Samurott comes in, this thing just has the super effective Ceaseless Edge, and it will knock me out here. And not only that, but since I used up my Terra, I can't go for the Terra Blast fighting. I have to go for another Raw Dog Terra Blast. However, with +2 special attack, that is going to be able to take this thing out. I think that was a very low chance roll to be able to get that kill. But hey, I'm able to take care of the Samurott, and that is amazing. And also, not only that, but here's the great part, right? They go into the Torkoal, they need to reset the sun because that Lilligant in the back is going to be their easy win condition. However, what I can do is go for a second Shell Smash. I don't know how bro's got any shell left to smash, but look at this. I can go for a second one. What that does is not only gets me up to +4 special attack, it also gets me to +4 speed. And I'm no mathematician, but Polteageist at +4 speed is faster than Lilligant with just doubled speed. So as they end up clicking the Earth Power there, we actually, surprisingly, they don't go for a Lava Plume in the Sun Boost, but we're able to live that. I can then fire off a Shadow Ball, and Torkoal helped us out a bit there. I don't know if he doesn't have the Lava Plume, or maybe it's just Rock and Eruption. Regardless, the Polteageist is able to live, and now this is exactly the situation we needed to try to bring this game back, because now as they go Lilligant, it has the doubled speed, but you're not faster when I have minimal shell left, baby. I'm carrying no weight over here. I can outspeed with the Stored Power. That's going to be able to take it out. The Stored Power is insanely powerful with the +4 in 3 different stats right now, which is insane. Also important to note, the stat drops from the Shell Smash do not actually affect the damage there. So now, as they end up bringing in the Mew, I can easily just bop this fella with a Shadow Ball. I mean, look, you're looking at a base 134 special attack Mon with +4. That's going to melt pretty much anything. So that takes care of the Mew. Final Mon is going to be the Water-type Charizard, who was once scary, but now the tea is piping hot, baby. I can just go for one more Stored Power, and that is going to be able to take care of it. So we were incredibly lucky in being able to get off 2 Shell Smashes. It's not likely to be able to most of the time you just need one. Sometimes you need to smash the shell a couple of times, and it comes in clutch for us. So that is going to be the end of game 1, and things got a little interesting there. So that's now going to bring us into the second match, because we're having a fun time, and we're out here serving up some ghostly tea. So look, if you've stuck around this far into the video, I want to say, hey, thanks. First of all, that's pretty cool. But also, go ahead and hit that like button for me. It could be a double cool situation. Wouldn't you like that? That would be really nice. So with that, let's go ahead and just jump into the match. All right, so this time I'm just going to go ahead and lead off with the Lycanroc. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get up some Stealth Rock, have a nice time doing it. Turns out, however, as they lead off with an Amoonguss, this little pig bastard mushroom, I do not want to be put to sleep immediately. While I can get up my Stealth Rock, it's not really worth just staying in and taking an obvious spore. So instead, I decide to swap out here. And I'm like, you know what? This place is not nearly mushroomy enough. I'm going to go into the shroom of my own. I go Breloom, who, you know, at least does temporarily block a spore, but now I find myself in a spot where this Breloom is an interesting one, right? I've got some crazy nonsense going here. First of all, I get a Toxic Orb going, which is fun because I'm also a Poison Heal or Toxic Heal. I go for the Substitute just because I want to see what this thing does. And while it most likely just clicks Sludge Bomb here, I can at least just kind of scout that out and make a play accordingly. Instead, they go for the Clear Smog. Doesn't really matter as I'm not going to be setting up stat boost anyway. And while I could just go for something like a Terra Normal boosted Facade and get some decent chip here, it was still not a high risk situation just going for that Substitute because after the Toxic Heal, you know, we get some health back and we're feeling pretty good. So knowing that they likely just go for the Clear Smog, the Amoonguss doesn't really have much to be afraid of in terms of the shroom on shroom violence. So I instead decide to switch into the Regidrago because I can come in, take a Clear Smog easily, but then also I threaten this thing. The best way I can threaten it really is just hitting hard on the special side. So as I go for the Draco Meteor here, we also run into the same problem as before where they have a friggin' Whimsicott. And I'm like, if they go Whimsicott, it's fine. I can just, you know, pivot out and make something happen. Instead, however, they decide to go into Porygon 2, and I should have gone for the Dragon Energy, but it's fine. The Draco Meteor is just guaranteed chip here. It does over half, which is really nice, but after that special attack drop, I find myself in a matchup that I'm probably not going to win. So I decide to swap out here. I'm thinking either this thing goes for a Thunder Wave or an Ice Beam. Regardless, I'm just going to switch into the Ground Bolt. This is kind of my best special sponge, which is hilarious. I bring this thing in with the Assault Vest. I can take attacks, and I can also threaten this thing with my own close combat. Instead, though, they go for the freaking Recover, and boy, do I hate Porygon 2, man. This thing just never wants to die. So I figure, why not just go ahead and beat the shit out of it? I go for that close combat, brings it right back down to like the same health. Sadly, though, after this Spadef drop, even with Assault Vest, I'm going to be taking some pretty considerable damage here from a Tri-Attack. Does bring me down nearly to half, and as I'm looking at it, I'm like, surely, you know, them expecting another close combat here, I'm going to predict the switch into the Amoonguss. I want to try to get the Regidrago matchup once again, so as I go right back into the Dragon Ball, I'm like, please go Amoonguss. That would be nice. They do end up swapping here, but unfortunately, as I'm like, okay, perfect. Mushrooms coming in. We have a nice time. Nope, they decide to go into the Whimsicott this time, which is fair, but as also I come in and I haven't clicked a move yet, guess what time it is? We can choose to go for the Terra Steel Terra Blast, and I'm having to deal with too many damn Whimsicotts today, but this time I go ahead and put the sideways axe on the freaking arm. I guess I don't know why they didn't decide to put it just on its head. Maybe it would just interfere. Regardless, we got the little swag on the tilt there. I can go for that Terra Blast, and we do outspeed because of the Choice Scarf. I'm thinking a big old metal rock to the face. Surely this thing dies. And no, it's gonna be Focus Sash. First freaking Focus Sash Whimsicott I've come across in about 7 years. So hey, that's fine though, because as they just go for the Moonblast, I obviously now resist it. I can just go for another Terra Blast here. They decide rather than conserving the thing, they're just gonna pop a Tailwind before they go down. So I get off another Terra Blast that is gonna take care of the Whimsicott. They get the Tailwind off, which is important to note for the next few turns. But honestly, still feels like a pretty good dub just taking care of a Whimsicott. Again, with Prankster, that thing can just be so annoying with things like Encore. And for the most part, we just like to see the fast boy gone. So with that taken care of, they can now go into whatever they want on a revenge switch. They decide to go into the Shaman Sky, who is tiny but mighty. This thing, honestly, Shaman Sky, I don't have a great matchup for this thing. Now I figure they probably go for an Earth Power, so that allows me to potentially bring in Breloom for free, but then the problem is that I'm just in trouble with an Air Slash, and I really do not have a whole lot that wants to deal with the Skyman here. So while Breloom eats up the Earth Power just fine, and I also get some Poison Heal going, I'm now in a spot where I'm like, you know, they're forced to land an Air Slash, and sometimes I'm going to roll that chance. They do connect on it, however, and that is going to be enough to kill about 8 Brelooms back to back. So, you know, that's going to knock me out. And at this point, at least with the Revenge switch in, I can go into something relatively safely. And I've got myself a little bit of a plan here. Again, while this Shaman is a huge problem, one way I can get around it is with clicking a nice little cheeky Endeavor. Now, it baits them into going for the attack. You're going to knock me down to 1 with that Focus Sash. They decide to go for the Earth Power, not wanting to risk the Seed Flare miss, which is great for me because as they do connect, I live with that Sash. I can then fire off the Endeavor, and now the fun part is I threaten with a priority Accelerock, but they probably know that's going to happen. So instead of going for that, I'm just going to click Endeavor again. Whatever they swap into is now going to deal with 1 health, and honestly, Endeavor is really fun because look, as they go into the Porygon 2, this thing's not feeling super healthy here, but it does come in. It's going to download an attack boost, which is useless. But now I get off the Endeavor, bring it down to 1, and that feels pretty good because now as I decide to just go for the Stealth Rock, I want to prioritize getting the rocks up. But also, if they click Recover, I'm thinking that I might just have enough damage with a close combat to knock it out regardless. So they do go for the Recover. Just at 1 HP, this is going to bring this thing down or up to about half. But now as I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's a shot that a close combat knocks these things out here. Either I go for the Endeavor or the close combat. I opt for the damage. Sadly, I've explained it before. Porygon 2 does not die. I don't know what the hell kind of rubber this thing's made out of, but you know, it lives everything. So it's still about the same situation if I had it on an Endeavor or just that close combat damage. So I decided to roll for it, and now they finished me off with an Ice Beam, which is fine because look, I took care of the Shaman essentially because as I, knocked it down to 1, then got the Stealth Rock up, now Shaman's out of the picture, and that feels pretty nice. So I can go into whatever I want. I'm just gonna go back into the Regidrago, who is honestly stirring things up, baby. I can come in, I go for the Terra Blast here, gonna be able to knock the fella out. I go for the Terra Blast just on the chance that now they can't really go into Flutter Mane, right? Because now I'm Choice Scarfed into that Terra Blast, and that would be nice. So instead, however, they have this damn thing in the back. Freaking Zamazenta. If the Porygon 2 wasn't enough, now they've got straight up Shield Dog, and it's going to already come in and get a defensive boost. So this thing is a bit of a problem. I know that Regidrago is going to be pretty valuable for me in this late game, and I figure one thing I can do is at least just go into the Ground Bowl. I can pop and Intimidate. While this thing's biggest mode of damage is probably just the Body Press, at least, with my big, scary, fleshy teeth, I can get an Intimidate going, which is nice. And they do go for that Body Press. Also does a ton of damage, and it is, in fact, just going to be faster. So I go into the Ground Bowl here essentially as a sack switch. Because, I mean, for the most part, what the hell is a guy supposed to do about crazy-ass legendary crowned Zamazenta? So that takes out the Grand Bull, and I've got a couple of different options. I'm going to be honest. Honestly, Polteageist has a position here to set up in front of this thing. But as I'm looking at it, I'm like, just maybe, my best bet is probably to try to get some damage on the thing first, because I'm worried about Polteageist not being able to complete a sweep. Now, instead, as I decided to go into the Empoleon, I thought that there was a chance that I live a Body Press from Guy. But, yeah, no, that does 115% at like the minimum. So yeah, that does take care of the Empoleon. Probably an oversight on my end, and not a good idea. However, it's freaking tea time, baby, and this is really my only chance to try to pull this game back. So I go into the Polteageist. I'm thinking I have to go for a Shell Smash here, and honestly, since this thing's intimidated, a Behemoth Bash is its best way to do damage, and it's really not going to do much with that Intimidate. So I go for the Shell Smash here. They decide to bring in the Amoonguss. And here's the situation, right? I go for that Shell Smash. I'm going to get that White Herb. I'm not going to be at +2 attack, special attack, and speed. And while I'm not really afraid of the Amoonguss, the one thing is in the back, they have a Flutter Mane. And I'm very afraid of Flutter Mane being booster energy speed. If it is booster speed, it's going to be faster than Polteageist. But at this point, look, this Teapot is my freaking last hope. And as I get that White Herb there, it's time to start melting stuff, or at least see if we can pull this game back with a little reverse sweep. So I go for the Restored Power here. That's gonna just straight up saute that mushroom into a delicious crispy boy, and that's amazing. So they've now got 3 Mons left. It's gonna be the Flutter Mane, they've got the Zamazenta, and they have a Skyman who can't come in and live a Stealth Rock switch in. So as they go into the Flutter Mane, we see no booster energy, which is absolutely amazing. Likely gonna be choice specs. That allows me to outspeed, Shadow Ball it right to the necklace, and that's going to take care of basically the one thing stopping the Teapot from coming in clutch here. So with that, now as they go back into the Zamazenta, this thing is, obviously just about the bulkiest bastard alive. And while it's got a shot to live a stored power, I know that since I had a White Herb without a defensive drop, I should be able to live a Bash. Now I go for that stored power. It barely is able to hang on. They go for that Behemoth Bash. I have a hard time saying that damn name. I'm not going to lie. I'm able to live, and that is going to essentially seal the game. And they also just turn their switch off, which is amazing. So the Polteageist is able to just make them rage quit, which is exactly what we're out here for. And that is some satisfying stuff. So, well, that was a fun one. I also have one more bonus match for you, because honestly, this thing is really fun for late game setups like that, right? And as we're going up against another extremely scary team, we're going to see who will win. Incredibly scary legendary guys and things like King Gambit, or 1T. And let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so from team preview, look, I see a Great Tusk. And as my team shows off a Lycanroc, I feel like, they might just go with the Tusk expecting the Lycanroc. Instead, as I decide to go for the Breloom expecting the Tusk, I'm instead met with just about the worst possible option if you're a Breloom, and that's freaking Ho-Oh. So, that's, you win some and you lose some in terms of the the mind games on the lead there, and I am now forced to just swap that fella out. So, as I'm hoping that they just go for the Brave Bird here, I go into the Empoleon. A Sacred Fire not only does like a ton of damage, it also gets the burn. So Empoleon essentially is now a sack switch in, and that's a bad time to lead there. It's also just a bad time in general when someone's using a freaking Ho-Oh. So, you know, yeah, they finished me off with an Earthquake, and I'm already down 5-6 versus crazy asshole who brought a Ho-Oh. So it was worth a shot though, right? Braylon being able to get up a sub in front of the Tusk would have been fun, but now I got to try to make something happen. I'm like, if you want to go crazy legendary, I'm going to go my own legendary, which is far less scary, but at least still pretty scary because I can go for a Dragon Energy, and I can also click that for free, thank God, because they don't have a fairy type. So I go for the Dragon Energy because with the Choice Scarf, that's going to do a ton of damage. Essentially, yeah, a scarier like eruption. As they decide to go into the King Gambit, check that out. Resisted hit does a bunch with a critical hit, and that is the type of help we need, especially when you're going up against crazy nonsense. So with that amount of damage, that feels good. I do want to get rid of this King Gambit because it's kind of the main thing that stops, you know, like a setup Polteageist. So as I go for another Dragon Energy here, they bust out the Terra, and if I had a nickel for every time a King Gambit Terra's in front of me, I would be probably pretty rich. I'm not even gonna lie. This thing always goes for a Terra, and it somehow always has the right Terra for this situation. So as they go for the Terra Fairy, I can now no longer Dragon Energy, and that is unfortunate. But them going for that Terra Fairy is still fine. They get it out of the way early, and I will always take that. So as they kowtow cleave, that does do a big ol' chunk of damage. And of course, I'm kind of forced to swap out here because I'm Choice Scarfed into freaking Dragon Energy. So I decided to just go into the Lycanroc here. I figure I don't really have a great switch into this. I mean, I'm hoping it doesn't Swords Dance. Swords Dance Sucker Punch is just insanely scary. But I go Lycanroc here. They decide to click the Iron Head, however, and that does bring me down to my Focus Sash. So now I'm in a bad spot, right? Because they can just expect the attack here, go for a Sucker Punch, pick me off, and this thing's slowly getting itself healthier with its freaking apple over here. So King Gambit absolutely busting my balls. I decided to go for the Accelerock here, just expecting the Sucker Punch, just try to grab some cheeky damage, you know, just before I go down. I can go for that priority before the Sucker Punch. Instead, however, they decide to switch into the Tusk, and I feel like this is bad news because I'm thinking fully freaking Rocky Helmet. Nope. But as I go for that Accelerock, it's not Rocky Helmet, which is sick because as it doesn't do anything, this thing heals with its leftovers, and now I'm in an amazing spot to just go for a free Endeavor, and that is sick as hell. I'm able to outspeed, I get that Endeavor off, bring this fella to 1 HP, which is amazing. As they finish me off with the Earthquake, I will take it. Now, Lycanroc would have been really nice to try to conserve for things like that Ho-Oh, but I mean, it is what it is. If I find a spot to click Endeavor on a full health Great Tusk, I will be doing that every time. So that takes care of, I mean, essentially the Tusk, right? It gets some leftovers, but it's hanging on its last breath over here. Now, I decided to just go into the Regidrago just because I can, you know, freely outspeed and have a fun time doing it. I'm going to lock myself into the regular Terra Blast here because it is going to be enough to pick off the Tusk, and that's fine. So with that thing out of the way, that feels pretty good, right? It did not actually even get up its own Stealth Rock, and that takes care of it. So now on the Revenge Switch, they decide to bring in the Thundurus. Now, one thing about this guy is I can't really stay in here. I don't want to go for the Raw Dog Terra Blast. It feels like I can still have some pretty good value out of the Regidrago. So I decided to go into my trusty Special Sponge. I can come in Assault Vested, likely just take an attack, see what they want to go for here. And most of the time, the Grand Bull is just a free body to switch into. However, as they end up going for the Sludge Bomb, that not only does over half, also gets the poison just for the salt in the wound, which is unfortunate. So that does a ton with a super effective hit. And it's coming down to the point in the match where I'm like, you know what? The Polteageist is essentially going to have to save me here. I have nothing really else to do. I have to stay in here. The Sludge Bomb's going to take care of the Grand Bull. And, you know, down goes the Bull without even doing a damn thing yet. But one of the best positions ever is when you can bring this damn teapot into a special attacker. Pretty much any special attacker, right? This thing has just at base 114 special defense. You are in a spot to freely set up against anything that's going to go for a special move. So knowing that I can live any attack, I go for the Shell Smash here. And while I am still afraid of things like the Sucker Punch King Gambit, we're going to have to just deal with it, you know, as it comes. Because I do also still have my Terra intact. So as I go ahead and start smashing, things are getting a little interesting, right? Because as they bring in Ho-Oh, this big bulky bastard is also the kind of guy that can, you know, for sure take an attack and get some chip off on us, which is not ideal. But as this thing's flapping away over here, Ho-Oh looks kind of crazy in this battlefield, I'm not gonna lie. I get my white herb, defenses are back to normal. All I can really do is go for a stored power here. Now the best part is, as I just go for that stored power, I get the crit. And that surely would not have taken that thing out without that crit, but I mean, look, I'm gonna take it. That's able to knock out the Ho-Oh, and just like that, I'm feeling like I have a chance in a match that felt kind of out of reach here, right? So, as they now go into the Thunderous once again, this thing, it outspeeds with a Thunderbolt, and it gets the Para, which is, I guess, some payback from the crit there, but it reveals it's gonna be Choice Scarf, first of all, and as I break through the Para, I get off another stored power, takes care of it, and that is incredibly clutch. It is, kind of sucks that we get parried there, but they do still have the King Gambit who could just sucker punch me at any time, right? But as they go into the Gastrodon, I'm like, dude, this is a free shot to just get off a stored power. I'm going to be faster. Nope. It turns out it is, in fact, not the Gastrodon. As they go for a Shadow Ball, it is going to be the Hisuian Zoroark, and sadly, that's going to take care of the Teapot. So, while, you know, the pot goes down, we still have a shot in this match. It's going to take some elbow grease, but there's a way that I can maybe pull this one back. So, my best bet is to go into the Regidrago here because of the fact that I'm Choice Scarf. I'll be able to outspeed, and barring that thing having a Focus Sash, it's not going to have a good time with that. So the funny part is they switch out the fake Gastrodon. They're going to go into the real Gastrodon. So just kind of an interesting interaction there. In comes the real Gastro. I go for the Draco Meteor here. That's going to go ahead and knock it down to below half, which is great. However, as I drop my special attack there, I'm like, I'm forced to go into Breloom, but there's far worse situations to go into a Breloom than on a grass water type, right? I can go into the Breloom here, and while it could just go for an Ice Beam, I know that I should be able to live that, and then I might be able to get some momentum on my side. So they do go for that Ice Beam. As I come in, I take a bit over half from that. That hurts. It's also going to put me in a spot to activate that Toxic Orb, and now I have a position, right? While I do not have the Seed Bomb, I want to go for a substitute expecting the switch. I'm like, dude, who stays in with the Gastrodon here fearing Grassy Death? It turns out this guy does, because as I go for the substitute, they stay in and just go for the Ice Beam. Unfortunately for me, that puts me in a spot where I'm like, dude, if I got that free sub up, I would have maybe been able to clean this up with the Breloom. But as they just stay in, likely a good play, because even if they just sack the Gastrodon, they're in a good spot. I can just go for the Facade now, even without the grass coverage or stab. That's going to be able to take care of the Gastrodon. And now we're down to 2. It's a 2v2 matchup here, and it could be potentially anybody's game. So, I get some Poison Heal. I'm feeling relatively healthy. Sadly, everything is faster than Breloom. And as they go into the Zoroark, this thing can no longer even... it just comes in just straight up as himself, which is fun. And unfortunately for me, they can just go for the Shadow Ball, able to outspeed. The funny part is this Breloom actually had no position in this match to do anything as long as the freaking Zoroark was around, because I have fighting and normal coverage. So I have nothing to touch the Ghost type with. So... as that takes care of the Breloom, now I've got one Mon left and a Dream, right? I've got the Choice Scarf Regidrago, who will be able to outspeed the Zoroark here. And if I can go for that Terra Steel, I'll have the advantage over the King Gambit to maybe be able to Terra Blast his Fairy-type Terradas, and hopefully, just maybe, we can clean things up. So all I can really do is lock myself into the Terra Blast. Now, the unfortunate news about the Choice Scarf is that while it is going to at least allow me to outspeed this thing, I'm forced to lock myself into the Terra Blast just because of that Fairy-type King Gambit in the back. So as I go for the Terra Blast, I'm hoping maybe I have enough to knock it out. Just barely, not going to be enough. And that allows them to then fire off the Shadow Ball, which is going to be enough to knock me out. So unfortunately, while we got closer than I was hoping for, they are going to be able to come out on top on that one. And some misplays on my end is going to result in the L, but still a fun match regardless, and we're going up against some crazy stuff. So look, thank you guys very much for watching. I had a fun time with this one, and fear the T as always. Thank you guys. I appreciate the support, and I will catch you next time. Peace out.